Thanks for checking in, everybody. Welcome to winter. It arrives tonight, and I know it feels like anything but winter outside. But tonight's discussion, we're going to talk about the evolving pattern. And if you guys have been following the blog, despite all this warm weather, and I'll admit that I did not expect it to be this warm in December. I have on my winter highlights. I said winter does get off to a slow start this year in December, but I didn't expect the warmest December on record. So I'm not going to sit here and claim victory. But I did expect winter, especially again to January and February as our banner month, to get going. And it's a winter that's not going to be as cold as last year. Maybe 1 to 2 degrees below normal is what I had, and I have 30% more snow than normal in a lot of areas. That was my winter forecast, and you can see I have it summarized right here. Now, if you look at what I'm expecting from January through March, this is the pattern. And what we're looking at here, guys, is the upper air pattern about 18,000 feet in the atmosphere. Cooler colors are troughs of low pressure, warmer colors are ridges of high pressure. Now this isn't the surface, so it doesn't mean that the surface looks exactly like this, but what it's showing you is because of the El Nino, and it's a very strong El Nino, and it's a huge debate on Twitter right now, the effects that this El Nino is going to have, and I might add the rest of the weather community. But El Ninos cause big troughs, okay, in the Gulf of Alaska. And the question always is, how close does the trough get to the West Coast? Because back in 1997, 1998, we had this trough right on the West Coast, almost connecting with a trough coming off the subtropical jet, and it was a disaster. You pulled a ridge all the way over in eastern Canada, and you had a warm pattern. I don't think that's going to happen this year, and I talked about that on my winter outlook. I do think the mean ridge is going to be right here. I've always said that. That this is not a brutally cold pattern by any means, but it is a pattern that can produce snow and cause episodes of colder weather. And I really think that is going to happen. So I'm not calling anything off here. And if anything, the model runs over the last couple days, or even the last week, the ensembles have looked good. They look like things want to change as we head into the first week of January. And I know some folks are saying that's not going to happen. It's a 1 week period. It's going to revert back. Are they right? They could be, but I don't see that. So let's go through some of the factors here. I'll try to keep this video to under 5 minutes. So this is our current pattern right here. Miserable, right? Christmas Eve is going to be record-breaking. Some areas might hit 70. Trough in the west, ridge in the east. All this blue over the top, which is a positive Arctic oscillation. You're not going to get a cold outbreak. You got to flip this. Now, here's the good news. This is a 5-day average, okay, of the GFS ensembles, and it shows a complete flip from what we have here. So what we're looking at now is a western ridge. So you're seeing a positive Pacific North American pattern here. We're getting this trough to develop south of the Aleutian Islands, which is key. Going back to my winter outlook, I'm looking for that trough. That should be a response to the El Nino, but also a function of warmer water off the west coast, which should keep this trough a little bit off the danger zone, which is right on the west coast. So I like to see this. And again, you can see it's average of 5 different days of what the ensembles are projecting. So it kind of filters things a little bit. It shows you this is not just a one-off, 1-day pattern. This wants to lock in. Now, it's not a very cold pattern. You do have Pacific air getting modified up here in Canada, but it does allow energy to cut underneath. And one thing we have, guys, from this El Nino is a very active plume of moisture coming right out of the subtropics here. You can see this is actually from today. It's a hose, basically. And if you get a split flow developing, like this is showing, you get all that moisture underneath, you get enough energy to dive into the top, you're going to get storms. Now, we don't have a negative NAO. We don't have blocking over Greenland, the red over Greenland. That's critical. Doesn't mean it can't snow, though. I just don't think we're going to have any big storms for the foreseeable future. But clipper systems, minor events, in the first 2 weeks of January are not off the table. It's there. And one more thing, I've been talking about the stratospheric warming. Now, on the left are my winter analogs for January. This is at 10 millibars in the atmosphere, so way up in the stratosphere. You could see all the warming that occurred in those years near Alaska and how the vortex got elongated. Look at what the GFS ensembles are showing, okay, as we get into the first week of January. Remember, this is an average of many different members, but you can see the warm over Alaska like you have here, and this vortex getting pushed and trying to be stretched out. That's a good sign. When I see things like this looking similar to analogs, I feel good about the forecast. European is showing similar. You can see all the warming here over Alaska. It's trying to push this vortex. Now, there is a situation where the vortex might not break up. I acknowledge that, but at least it's different than what we're seeing now, which is an enormously strong vortex. So I'd like to see that. In addition, let's take a look at where the El Nino region is right now. This is outgoing long wave radiation. Where it's dark is where you have a lot of storminess. And I want to show this because the storminess is closer to the date line. It's important. I know a lot of other guys aren't looking at it. Some other folks are looking at this, but I like to see it because based on the temperature profile of the Pacific, you'd expect more storminess close to the date line and not so much closer to South America. If you had all the long-range radiation anomalies over here, it wouldn't be a good sign, but they're more to the west. Another thing I like to see. On top of that, we have the Madden-Julian oscillation. Okay, basically, it's an area of convection that rotates into different phases, okay, throughout the tropics, okay, especially here you have your Western Pacific, Western Hemisphere, and Africa, Maritime Continent, and Indian Ocean. So this cluster of convection moves into different phases, and based on what phase it's in, it modifies the jet stream. Phase 8 is a very good sign for at least a shot at colder conditions. You can see phase 8 down here for December, January, February. Now, in strong El Ninos, it's not that cold. However, it's still something that's a flip from phases 5, 6, and 7, which you can see we've been going through, which is why we've had warm weather. So overall, what I'm saying, guys, is I like what I see. I like the pattern flip. It's going to evolve. I think February is the banner month, but January is showing signs that we need to start seeing now that, hey, you know, this winter is not over, okay? It's not going to be very cold. Things are going to back off at times, but this is the best I've seen things look in the last 2 months, I'm going to be honest with you. And I think eventually if these heights build up even further to the north and you get a connection with some heights on the other side of the globe, so you get all red up here, you're going to have more Arctic air actually get injected. That's not here yet, but it could happen. Thanks for checking in. I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm excited. I think we're going to have some fun this winter, especially as you get the second half of January into February, with the wild card being the first half.